Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Try, Adjust, Thrive with your host, Oksana Varas. Now, before I dive into today's episode, for anybody who is a frequent listener of this podcast, I would just like to ask you to share this podcast with your loved ones, with your friends, share it with anybody who you think would vibe with the energy, because the more that this podcast grows organically and the more we create a community that actually feels at peace here at home, who feels like they get something out of it, the more fulfilling it becomes for all of us. And please share this episode on social media. Follow me at Try, Adjust, Thrive on Instagram. And yeah, let's get into it. All right, so today I want to talk about the process of getting past our setbacks. Ironic that I just stuttered while saying the word setbacks, but we're not going to talk about that. So I want to talk about this because yesterday I was working a background job, like a background acting job, and I was talking with somebody who honestly sounded a lot like me 2 years ago. We had this conversation about basically doing things that are good for us, but struggling to stay consistent with them because we as human beings struggle with instant gratification. And so when we don't see the fruits of our labor immediately, oftentimes we can get discouraged. And so as a result, we can often fall off of that wagon. And this morning, it actually inspired me to write this journal entry that I want to read to you guys. So it's been a while since I've done this, but I'm starting off this episode with a journal entry. All right. So let's talk about it. So I wrote, yesterday at the background job that I did, I spoke with somebody who was struggling to believe in themselves. They really wanted to be healthier, but they struggled with consistency and patience. This made me realize that there are so many of us that allow our setbacks to define us, when really, they are the very things that set us up for a stronger future us. This person kept stating limiting statements of scarcity, such as, I'm bad at XYZ, I'm not the kind of person that does blank, and it reminded me that this is possibly the most important part in being a pioneer for our futures, saying the right things to ourselves. We embody the things that we say to ourselves on a daily basis. So when we continuously speak negatively to ourselves, we simply cannot expect progress to be made in that department. We become too occupied with all of the reasons we cannot to see all of the reasons that we can. The thing is, many might wonder what those reasons even are because they've spent so much time focusing on the negatives and on their setbacks. And should that be the case, then our focus needs to shift on how this experience is instead setting us up for growth. My podcast is a great personal example of this. I didn't always know how to love myself, how to have faith in myself, and think positively. This is something that I had to really practice like a muscle in the gym. I had to continuously work on correcting my limiting thoughts, and over time, I realized I wanted to share what I learned about this process with others. So in that vein, it's actually remarkable how often the things that we struggle with can actually grow to become a big part of our purpose in a way. I became determined to love myself, and through that, I gained knowledge that others have not. As a result, not only do I now have the self-love that I always dreamed about, but I've also created a platform where others can feel encouraged to do the same. Now, the major thing I learned through trial and error when it comes to rewiring our brains is something that I overlooked for a really long time until just a few months ago. And that thing is permission. Giving ourselves permission to do the things that we want to do. This might sound a bit confusing at face value, but let me elaborate. What I mean by giving ourselves permission is, well, just that. Oftentimes, there are things that we want to accomplish or work towards. However, we have a little voice in the back of our heads, our inner heckler, that tells us that we can't. That voice is our ego. It loves to tell us all the reasons we can't accomplish things, why we are a terrible candidate, why we're weak, why we're dumb, why we're unable, why we're just not one of those people. That voice, our ego, it's like our own personal bully that loves to control our every move. But what many people don't realize is that that voice is not us. It is just our thoughts running rampant in our brain. But our actual self, the part of us that wants to accomplish the things that we never have yet, is entirely separate from our ego. And furthermore, when we can detach ourselves from that egoic way of thinking, if even just for a moment, we can begin to listen to our hopes and our dreams a bit more clearly, with less interruption. So, there's more to unpack here, and I didn't actually finish the entry, but I'm just going to keep moving on with where my stream of consciousness was going in this journal entry. And so a thought that I didn't actually finish writing about in this entry is the part about giving ourselves permission to do the things that we want to do. Now, this literally was like a mental health breakthrough for me. I kid you not, like a month ago, 2 months ago. And it seems kind of strange, not permitting ourselves to do something that we want to do, especially when those are things that will benefit us, better us, and improve our lives in the long run. However, I've found that for me, and I know that other people can relate, there is that part of us that believes that we are not worthy of that thing, that believes that, I'm not that type of person. I'm not the successful one. And for whatever reason, that voice exists. And we all have that voice in a different area of our lives. And, oftentimes it's due to conditioning. For example, I'm a great singer. And all my life, people have told me that I'm a great singer. But if people told me that I was a bad singer all my life, no matter how good I am, I would probably struggle very, very deeply to believe that I am a great singer. Now, on the other hand, as a kid, I was always told that I wasn't very good at science. And so that reinforced this mindset in my head to this day that I'm not very good at science. Meanwhile, the funny thing is I'm actually fascinated by biology and our bodies and our brains and psychology. I'm very fascinated by those things, but there's still that little voice in the back of my head that's like, oh, well, you have no place to care about this stuff or study this stuff because you're not good at science. And it's so silly, but conditioning runs deep, right? And so to go back full circle to the giving ourselves permission, because that egoic part of ourselves exists that does not give us permission to believe the things that we want to believe in ourselves, we will not do the thing. Whether it's, starting a new hobby, going back to school, going and chasing a new job, career, life, whatever. No matter what it is that we want to do, we will not do the thing and consistently persist to do the thing until we quite literally give ourselves permission to do it. As we get older, it becomes our job to parent ourselves and to pick up where our parents left off, right? And so it's almost as if we are now our own parents and we are literally telling ourselves, no, you can do that thing. I give you permission to go chase that dream job. I give you permission to put yourself out there. I give you permission to have faith in yourself. And it sounds so simplified and so silly to think that, is it really that simple? But I put it to the test. I started trying this out on a regular basis, giving myself permission to do the things that I normally tell myself that I'm not capable of doing or I'm not worthy of doing. And what I found was it remarkably changed the way that I communicate with myself. Because once I started to give myself permission to do all the things that in the past I would create self-limiting beliefs off of, I realized I am truly the only one getting in my way. And sure, we all have learning humps, and especially if you're starting a new thing that you've never done before, you're going to be bad at it at first. It's going to take you time to get good at it. That's just a given. You cannot expect yourself to be a master at something that you've just started. It just, life doesn't work that way. Even someone who is naturally inclined to do something will still require time and energy and training and effort to get good at that thing. However, you are never going to want to sustain the effort necessary to do that thing unless you give yourself the permission to, unless you get to that place of humility where you realize it is going to take me a while. I am going to need to be patient. I am going to need to practice and work towards this thing and be consistent and do it one day at a time, and understand that there are going to be days where I might have only made an inch of progress. And then there are going to be other days where I feel like I ran a mile. I ran 2 miles. I ran a 5K, but the point is that when we give ourselves permission, we suddenly feel less resistant toward ourselves because we understand that that voice in the back of our heads that's telling us that we can't do things, that is just our ego. And that is our inner bully that is trying to keep us down. And also, we can understand that it's okay that that voice exists because there's no getting rid of it. There's only learning to work with it and learning to unlearn things that it has been telling us for years. And if there's something that I've learned, it's that you cannot expect your inner monologue to change overnight. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes trust. A big, big part of doing something new, of changing your life, of just, picking up a new habit or changing the way that you communicate with yourself, it takes trust in the process. And this person that I was speaking to yesterday when I was at my background acting job, they said that one of their struggles is that, on paper, they understand, if I do these exercises for a long time, then eventually I will get better. But it almost seems just for background, this person, just to elaborate a little bit, this particular person, they struggle with being consistent at the gym because they have a lot of neck tension, and it hurts a lot for them to basically do exercise. And so, I asked them, well, do you meditate? And do you stretch? And do you do the little habitual things that release tension in your body? And they were like, to be honest, I don't. And I've been focusing way more on, needing to spend a bunch of money on getting massages and needing to go to the doctor and needing to do all these things. And I was like, well, I'm not a doctor and I'm not in your body and I cannot speak for you. But I will say that oftentimes we tend to overlook the simple little things that actually speak the greatest volumes in terms of how we can improve the physical state of our bodies. So often we injure ourselves and we think, oh my God, I need a doctor, when really maybe all you need is a little bit of rest and stretching, maybe rolling out your muscles with a muscle roller. And again, I'm not a doctor and I'm not here to diagnose anybody. However, it's so important to not forget the fundamentals when we are approaching an issue before we start diving deeper into the nicheness of it all and exploring maybe I have this really rare thing wrong with me and blah, 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 blah. First things first, are we meditating? First things first, are we taking care of our bodies? Are we stretching? Are we exercising them in a way that is intuitive and not just, forcing a square peg into a round hole? Are we working with ourselves? And so this person was like, it almost sounds too simple to work. And I know that it probably will, but just the idea of putting in the work, but just the idea of doing that over and over and over again and not seeing the results for a long time is really discouraging to me. And I was like, truthfully, a big part of growing a stronger relationship with your body from a health and wellness standpoint is practicing trust in the process. Trusting the process is such a major, I think, just character development point in all of our lives in terms of knowing what we are truly capable of, because Rome was not built in a day, and if it was, it would collapse tomorrow. Y'all know I love to say that because it's just so true, and it applies to literally everything in life. And so, I was saying all these things to this person, and then I was met with more resistance from them because they were like, I think you're right, but I guess I also struggle with just, doing it consistently. And like, I feel like I'm just not one of those people that does the things that they say that they're going to do. And then I was like, there it is. That's the root of the problem. The root of the problem is not your neck pain. And I didn't say this to them because I didn't know them this well, but your neck pain is just a symptom of the root of the problem. The root of the problem is that you don't believe in yourself. And believing in yourself is such a deeper process than people make it out to be. People just say, believe in yourself. And it's like, if you don't know how to do that, then you don't know how to do that. When people say believe in yourself, to somebody who doesn't understand that their negative self-talk is simply just the same neural pathway being strengthened over and over through repetition, they don't understand that they even can believe in themselves because they've been spending so much time telling themselves that they are unable to. And the only way that we can start to learn to believe in ourselves is simply by starting from the very basic and very simple practice of correcting our negative self-talk. Now, I speak about this in my very first episode, and for so long I was like, well, I'm not going to speak about it again because I talk about it in my first episode. And then I realized that this needs to be talked about over and over and over and over again. Just like changing your mindset and changing the way that you communicate yourself needs to be repeated over and over and over again, just like that needs to be constantly done on a daily basis. You need to constantly correct your thoughts. Just like that, I need to be talking about this more often because this is my bread and butter, folks. I will say, do I love to inspire people to do things that they think they can't do? Because guess what? When I started to do that for myself, I was amazed at how many things I told myself I was incapable of doing that were perfectly well within my reach. Still can't fly. Still can't do that. But besides that one, I'm just kidding. But for real, it's really remarkable how powerful our brains are. I mentioned this quote in another one of my episodes, and I'm going to mention it again because it's so true. Henry Ford once said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right. Now, that quote becomes more and more juicy and prevalent and true and real the older I get, the more that I continue my journey of self-discovery and self-work and improving myself, because it just gets constantly reinforced over and over again. And, here's the thing. So I'm currently reading this book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. For those of you who haven't heard of it, such a good book. Such a good book. If you are somebody who is creative or wants to become more creative, it is an excellent tool to do that. And I don't just mean being a singer like me. I mean, like, if you want to just pick up arts and crafts, if you want to become a writer, if you want to become, if you want to learn a new instrument, if you want to become a painter, literally any type of art, or just, become more creative in your business. If you're, an entrepreneur and you want to gain more creative freedom and come up with more creative ideas. This is I can't recommend this book enough. And not only is it a book on unleashing your creativity to its fullest, but it's also kind of a shadow work book. And it talks about spirituality and how to let your spirituality guide you to becoming a more creative person. And let me just preface that you don't need to be a spiritual or religious person in order to get something out of this book. She speaks about spirituality very, very broadly. And she very much prefaces that in the book herself, that you can be an atheist and still apply these step-by-step practices and guides. You don't have to believe in it. You just have to do what she tells you to do. And essentially, it helps. But anyway, this is besides the point. I just can't stop gassing this book up to anybody who will listen. So if anybody is looking for any of the things that I listed off, if you are looking to enhance your creativity, 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10, honestly, recommend this book, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Anyway, so in this book, she talks about those instances where you see somebody who's famous for being creative, and you look at what they do and you think to yourself, well, I could do that. I could do better than what they're doing, and they're famous. And she talks about how part of being successful in your creativity and gaining some sort of accolade or recognition for your work, it's not just about having talent, but it's about having the confidence and the gumption to do something with your talent. And I think that this is a really good point, not only with creativity, but with anything in life. There are so many of us who put ourselves into boxes before we even have the balls to try. And I find that this is applicable not only for creatives, but for anyone in life trying to do anything in their lives. I really do believe that so much of the work that we are capable of achieving is stifled by us telling ourselves that we can't do it. That's just not fair. How on earth is that fair to us? It's like, for anyone who's seen Harry Potter, it's like nobody thinks it's fair that Harry Potter has to literally sleep under a staircase and he's hidden away and basically abused by his aunt and uncle. Not basically, he is abused by his aunt and uncle, but that's besides the point. Nobody thinks that is fair because it is not. So why is it that we think it's fair to ourselves that we box ourselves in? And then, so many of us blame our external circumstances before we start to look in the mirror and really acknowledge, what am I doing to get myself there? How am I getting in my own way? And this can be applied to career. This could be applied to personal health. This could be applied to relationships. It's literally like one of the biggest pieces of evidence as to why or why not we are achieving what we want to achieve in our lives. And this is not to bully ourselves further. Let me just preface that, because it can be very easy to see how we've gotten in our own way and then spiral further and be like, well, why do I do that? Oh my gosh, I'm getting in my own way. Oh, I'm just so negative, blah, 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 blah. It can be, it can sometimes become even more disempowering, because then we start to spiral and wonder what is wrong with us that we have allowed ourselves to not believe in ourselves. However, it is very, 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 very important that we don't allow ourselves to get mad for having a negative self-talk relationship with ourselves because we didn't know any better. That is so important for us to know, because let me just say, I used to be so self-deprecating, and not only was I self-deprecating, but then I would be self-aware about how self-deprecating I was, and then I would just get even more self-deprecating, and I'd be like, wow, I'm such a fucking loser. I can't even be nice to myself. Not only do I not believe in myself, but I'm doing it knowingly and perpetuating it, and it created this downward spiral. And let me just, oh gosh, if I could give every single person listening who struggles with this a hug and just tell you guys you shouldn't blame yourself for not knowing better, I would do it in a heartbeat, because it's so natural as human beings, especially in this ridiculously fast-paced world that we live in, to feel like we need to be perfect all the time, to feel like, when we're falling flat, when we're experiencing setbacks, that there's something wrong with us. But truthfully, there's nothing wrong with us. We are simply products of our own environment. We need to stop giving ourselves more credit than credit is due, because no offense to humans, but until we know, we're just kind of walking through life a little blindly. And we have to give ourselves grace. Like, something that became really freeing for me was not giving myself that much credit. Back when I was still really naive and I wasn't emotionally matured. And it's like when you see a child touch a hair curler for the first time ever and they burn themselves, are you really gonna get mad at a child for touching something that they didn't know was supposed to be hot? It's not our place to be upset with that child when they didn't know any better. So when we look at ourselves as child and parent, it's just simply not fair to tell ourselves that we should have known better when we just simply didn't. A lot of this stuff is not taught to us. I would argue that most of this stuff is not taught to us in school. And unless we're really lucky with really emotionally mature parents, which many of us were not lucky enough to have, because emotional maturity is a very new thing. And a lot of people just didn't grow up with it. And a lot of people from our parents' generations are farther behind than we are in a lot of ways in terms of emotional maturity. So it's really, really important for us to just give ourselves the grace and understand that this thing that we're doing, this learning how to be kinder to ourselves, learning how to be more constructive with ourselves and rewiring our brains to believe in ourselves, this is stuff that, a lot of people didn't know how to do for a long time. And so it's okay that until recently, you didn't know how to give yourself permission to do the things that you've always wanted to do in your life. And, speaking very vulnerably, just from my own personal life experiences, I am really still learning how to advocate for myself in the creative world and how to believe in myself as a singer. And that's something that I really struggle with. And it's funny because you would think that it's not something that I struggle with because I'm a good singer. But the thing is, I am very timid when it comes to reaching out to venues so that I could perform. And someone might ask, well, why? And it's because it's something that I never practiced. I never practiced being my own boss. So there's so many growing pains and learning curves that I am facing every single day through this process because it's a muscle that I haven't strengthened. And right now, I can't do a pull-up because I have not put in the reps necessary in the gym to be able to do a pull-up. It has been a dream of mine to be able to do a pull-up, and eventually I'm going to be able to do a pull-up. It's going to happen. Like, I've put in a lot of work into it, but I haven't gotten there yet. But am I going to get mad at myself for not being able to do a pull-up? It's going to take me time to develop that strength to be able to do a pull-up. So I'm not going to sit around being pissed off at myself because I simply haven't trained a certain thing in my life. I'm just going to accept the fact that it's going to take me a while to get there. I'm going to accept the fact that it's a work in progress. We are all works in progress. Has anybody told you that recently? Has anyone brought to your attention that Rome wasn't built in it? I already said that. I'm kidding. But has anyone told you that you are a work in progress? That you're not meant to be perfect all the time? Because if they haven't, and if you're struggling to remind yourself of that, let me remind you. That's not your job. Your job is never to be perfect. Your job is to just do the best you can and give yourself grace and be kind to yourself and practice one day at a time, unlearning the habits that set you back, the mental habits. Remind yourself to give yourself permission to do what it is that you want to do because I believe in you. Because I've literally learned through experience that it really is that simple. Is it easy? Not always, but it is simple. It just takes repetition. It takes constant reminding yourself, constant rewiring of your brain by correcting your thoughts, catching yourself when you're about to put yourself down. And even if it feels like pulling teeth with yourself, literally saying, no, we're not going to talk to ourselves that way because we know better. Because we aren't just that type of person that fails. That is just simply a narrative that we've strengthened. And we are the most powerful forces in our own lives to rewrite that narrative. And that used to intimidate the crap out of me because I still didn't believe in myself. But now, because I've literally put the reps in, because I've said over and over and over to myself that I am capable, that I am strong enough, smart enough, cool enough, whatever enough to do the things that I want to do in my life. Now, knowing that I am the strongest force in my life that will get me from point A to point B, that is such an empowering feeling. Because understanding that you are quite literally in the driver's seat of your own life and you are not on autopilot, once you have that power to understand that you can change and redirect your course whenever you want to, and that you can decide where your life goes from here, that's a really, really exciting thing. And you don't have to keep telling yourself that you're unworthy. You get to decide if you're worthy. You are the person that tells yourself that you are worthy because you are worthy, but you have to believe it. Nobody else, the entire room can believe in you, but if you don't believe in yourself, then you're not getting there. But it's very, very important that if people believe in you, stop doubting them. Start allowing yourself to believe what they believe and be grateful for those people, because those people are probably people that you should keep in your life if they believe in what you have to offer. But you have to meet them there. And you have to be even more believing in yourself than they are. And then you start to get somewhere that you actually enjoy. And you're like, wow, I got myself here because I actually did the work to tell myself that I could. And I gave myself the permission to. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. That's everything I have to talk about today. And I really hope that this episode reaches anybody who it needs to reach. Please, if you liked this episode, share it with a loved one, share it with a friend. Please like and subscribe and share this episode on social media if you liked it as well. Just spread the word. And thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so grateful for all of you, and I really hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I hope that you believe in yourselves, and I hope that you work on rewriting those narratives that you've been telling yourself, because you're awesome and you deserve everything you want in life, and you deserve to achieve amazing things. Because if you got this far into this episode, then clearly you care about yourself, and clearly there's a part of you that knows that you can do it. Okay? So I want you to remind yourself that. And remember that I believe in you. I'm in your corner. I want you to succeed. Just like I want myself to succeed, I want to see it for you. I want to see it for all of us. And yeah, that's pretty much it for today, guys. I love you. I can't wait for next week. And lastly, as always, be kind to yourself. Okay. Thanks, guys. Mwah.